Have you ever just, daydreamed about it? Maybe kicking over a rock on a hike or cleaning out the attic and just stumbling upon a life-changing fortune. I think it's a fantasy we all have, but for a very, very lucky few, it's not a fantasy at all. So today, we're diving into 6 absolutely incredible, real-life stories of ordinary people who became millionaires basically overnight. And let me just start by asking you a question that sounds like it's straight out of a movie. Could a $4 flea market find, something you bought just for its frame, actually be hiding a secret worth millions of dollars? Well, you're gonna want to stick around because the answer is one of the most unbelievable stories you will ever hear. Okay, first up, let's talk about the hunters. These are the folks who are actually out there looking for something. Now, they might not have known what they were going to find, but they had a goal, they had a tool, and, as you'll see, a whole lot of luck on their side. Let's travel back to Australia in 1980. I want you to meet Kevin Hillier. He, his wife, and their 4 kids were actually living in a bus at a caravan park. I mean, times were tough. And they got even tougher after an injury forced Kevin into back surgery. His doctor's only advice for recovery? Just go for some walks. Now, right here is where a simple, small decision changed absolutely everything for them. To make those recovery walks a little more interesting, Kevin took one of his workers' compensation checks and bought himself a metal detector. Just a simple hobby to pass the time while he healed. And then, this happened. Just 12 days after having this super vivid dream that he'd found a giant gold nugget, Kevin was out on one of his walks when his new detector just went wild. He started digging and pulled up a 60-pound behemoth of solid gold. He sold what became known as the Hand of Faith nugget to the Golden Nugget Casino for a cool $1 million. Yeah, they don't live in that bus anymore. All right, for our next story, we're hopping over to England in November of 1992. And it all starts with a very simple and honestly, a very relatable problem. A farmer named Peter Watling lost his hammer somewhere out in his field. After searching and searching with no luck, he finally called a friend for help. So his friend Eric Laws happened to be an amateur metal detectorist. He came over to find the hammer, but his detectors started beeping like crazy over something else entirely. They didn't just find the hammer. They unearthed a massive treasure from the late Roman Empire. I mean, just look at this list. We're talking almost 15,000 coins, plus gold jewelry and all this silverware. Absolutely incredible. So what happens when you just find a Roman treasure hoard in your field? Well, in the UK, it was declared a treasure trove, which legally means it belongs to the crown. But, and this is the good part, under the law, the finder gets paid the full value as a reward. Eric received $3 million, which he so generously split with his farmer friend Peter. And yes, they did find the hammer too. So our third hunter is another metal detectorist, this time a man in his 20s searching in northwest England back in 2010. He was near an old Roman road, an area where he'd found a few coins before, but nothing that would prepare him for what he was about to discover. Okay, and here's where a really small legal detail makes a multi-million-dollar difference. See, unlike the Hoxne hoard, this was a single artifact, not a whole collection of items. The law at the time basically said that a hoard was probably buried on purpose, with the owner planning to come back for it. If they never did, it belongs to the crown. But a single item? Well, that's just considered lost property. It belonged completely to the finder. And what he found was this stunning 2nd century Roman cavalry helmet. I mean, look at that thing. After it was restored, it went to a Christie's auction and sold to a private collector for $3.6 million. All because it was a single item and not a hoard. That one little distinction. Wow. Okay, let's switch gears. These next stories are about treasures that weren't hunted for at all. They were literally hiding in plain sight, in living rooms, in kitchens, at flea markets, just waiting for someone to accidentally realize what they were really worth. Remember that question from the beginning of our story? Well, here's the answer. Back in 1991, a man is browsing a flea market in Pennsylvania. He spots a painting that, honestly, he doesn't even like, but he is drawn to its old, really ornate frame. He paid $4 for it. That's it. $4. The price of a cup of coffee. He took it home with the one and only intention of throwing out the art and just keeping that cool-looking frame. So when he gets home and takes the painting out of the frame, a folded piece of paper falls out from behind it. He carefully unfolds it and discovers one of the first 200 copies of the Declaration of Independence ever printed. These are called Dunlap broadsides, and they were printed on the very night the Declaration was confirmed. At the time he found it, only 24 were even known to have survived. So what's the payoff for a find like that? Well, the man sold it in 1991 for $2.4 million. Incredible, right? But the story doesn't even end there. That same copy was sold again in the year 2000 for a mind-boggling $8.14 million. Now that is a heck of a return on a $4 investment. Our next story is just as wild, I promise you. It's 2019, and a 90-year-old woman in France is getting ready to sell her house. So she calls in a local auctioneer to see if any of her old belongings are worth anything. The auctioneer walks into her kitchen and spots this small, dark painting hanging right above the hot plate stove. Now, the woman thought it was just some old Russian religious icon she'd had forever. The auctioneer, though, he thought it looked older. He sent it to an art historian, and the results were just staggering. It was The Mocking of Christ, a long-lost masterpiece by the 13th century artist Cimabue. It sold at auction for $26 million. Can you even imagine that hanging above your stove all those years? All right, our final story is, it might be the most incredible one of them all. A scrap metal dealer in the American Midwest is at a flea market, and he spots this ornate golden egg. He has no idea what it is, but he figures, hey, he can melt it down and make a few $100 profit on the scrap gold. He haggles the seller down to $13,000 with the full intention of destroying it. But here's the twist. The gold buyers he took it to said his price was too high, so the egg just sat on his kitchen counter for years. One day, totally bored, he decides to Google the name engraved on it. A few clicks later, he's staring at an article with a picture of his egg. He flies to London to meet the expert quoted in the article, who later said that seeing the photos was like Indiana Jones finding the lost ark. And what had this man bought for scrap? What had been sitting on his counter all that time? It was the lost Third Imperial Fabergé egg, commissioned by Tsar Alexander III back in 1887 and lost to the world after the Russian Revolution. Its estimated value? A staggering $33 million. So, there you have it. 6 stories that take us from doctor-ordered walks and lost hammers all the way to dusty flea markets and unassuming kitchens. It's just an incredible journey of luck, history, and unbelievable value, right? I mean, this table really puts it all into perspective. Just look at the starting points versus the final values. A simple walk becomes $1 million. A $4 picture frame turns into over $8 million. A piece of scrap metal becomes a $33 million imperial treasure. It just proves that history and fortune can be hiding absolutely anywhere. And that leaves us with one final, kind of tantalizing question. It really makes you look at that old box of your grandparents' stuff a little differently, doesn't it? What priceless piece of history might just be hiding in your own home, just waiting to be rediscovered?